I feel like every time we connect, there's always something new to like discover and in our journeys. And I feel like I learned so much by what you're doing, like in life, and just in terms of what you've been able to create for, especially for the Arab diaspora in the UK, and what you've created with the Arab Film Club, which has been really incredible, and just seeing it, like I'm seeing it more from afar now, but I get, because I'm in Cairo, but seeing what you've done, the impact, I just want to start with that. Like I want to firstly, I'm curious if that's something you've ever had in your vision, like when you started out this career. Like, did you ever envision creating such a platform for fellow Arab diaspora artists? Or
No, not at all, actually. Like, if you'd asked me 10 years ago what I'd be doing now, it wouldn't necessarily have been this. So the Arab Film Club just grew quite organically out of a play reading group that I set up during lockdown. So it really came about because of the lack of theatres and community spaces and work as well, and suddenly having lots of time on my hands. And a lot of my friends and colleagues were finding themselves in the same position, wanting to stay active and creative and stimulated, but not having a theatre they could go to see a show, or not having a cinema where they could go see a show. And of course you can watch films online or read by yourself, but the community space aspect was missing. So we did the next best thing at the time of lockdown, which was just online meetings. And so I think and then now it's morphed into something much, much bigger, which has also taken me by surprise. But I think if lockdown hadn't have happened, I don't think there would have been a film club. And yeah, I think I thought that I would just be pursuing acting and perhaps writing too, because I was always interested in writing as a child. But I never thought I'd be organising and hosting events. I didn't think that was something that I would necessarily enjoy doing, but it's just taken me by surprise, and I really enjoy it. And it gives me something to do when things are quiet, and it means that I make new friends and meet new people. So I really enjoy it. It's a real kind of community thing as well. It's very much like we're all in it together, and I just sometimes moderate, or I would curate the lineup of films that we watch. And then if there's ever a director, I would really enjoy interviewing that person. But other than that, it's really kind of just a space where people can come and eat together and watch films together and make friends. And it's all very informal. So yeah, I enjoy it.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and when you discovered that you wanted to enter the performing arts, was there any early inspiration that like kind of created that fire to be in this field?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly some actors that I've always really admired. The late Helen McCrory was one. I always just thought she was extraordinary. But I think inspirations came a lot later. It was kind of came more when I was an adult or a young adult, and starting to go to the theatre, and then starting to see professional actors and people older than myself, and then you start to look at their career and you admire them. But much younger, before that, as a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old, I wouldn't say I had any inspirations per se. At least not in the film industry, because, you'd watch cartoons and animation, and you don't know when you're a child who's making projects and who the director is or who the producer is. So I think for me, it started when I was 10, and I was in a production of The Wizard of Oz at school. And for me, that was the moment where I thought, this is what I want to do with my life. And that same year, in my final year of junior school, I set up a newspaper, like a school newspaper, and I edited that. So that's where I got my first taste of like wanting to write and edit, and my interest in storytelling.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay. That's yeah. That's so interesting because what I'm curious about, especially in discussing here, is like having cross culture and having like your early experiences of both writing and performing seems to be connected to like you mentioned the Wizard of Oz, you know, and that's like a very huge like known Western, you know, story. And so how did the transition begin when you started now, like you've been curating a lot of films, specifically Arabic or Middle
Mm,
Eastern, if that's if you are okay with that phrase, because I know there are so many phrases that, you know,
I know.
around. So I don't want to be politically incorrect, but I also, you know, I don't have any specific like political, you know, views anyway around this. So,
Understand,
yeah.
yeah. I think for me, it wasn't a conscious decision at all. I just happened to have a Palestinian father. And when I was much younger, yeah, of course, as someone that grew up here, all my cultural references were the vast majority were, yeah, American or British. British because I was born and raised here, and American just because, you know, that massive industry is sold around the world. Um, and so I always knew I was Palestinian, and my father was, you know, an Arab and spoke Arabic. So that was always part of my cultural identity. It was always in the household. You know, from a young age, we'd go to concerts or fundraisers or, you know, Arab community events, but it was all for his generation. I didn't have any friends growing up who were of an Arab background when I was growing up. So my aspirations to be an actor were entirely influenced by what we did in school, which was, yeah, you know, plays and novels from the Western world, which I suppose makes sense geographically based on location. And it was only really when I started acting professionally and when I left university that I suddenly realized I was an Arab actor.
Oh wow.
um, which was ironic because my Arabic wasn't very good and still is quite patchy. um, and I think, yeah, yeah, it's quite interesting. And I'm happy to play Arab roles, of course, because that is part of who I am. But I also really just would like to be considered as talent rather than a type, you know? And it's taken quite a long time, I think, to try and break out of that casting bracket and out of that box.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and I suppose the thing that I always knew, because I was Palestinian, there was a strong sense of what was happening in Palestine. So a strong awareness of the occupation and the situation, and that was ingrained from a very young age. But I didn't see any connection at the time between that and art. And obviously, there is a massive connection. Like Palestine has a long history of civil society and literature and art and cultural resistance, but I didn't know that as a child. So any awareness of my Palestinianness, for want of a better way of putting it, was because of the catastrophe and the situation and things that my father told me and stories of displacement. I never thought it would be something that I would then explore professionally, like, you know, being what it means to be an actor, but also a Palestinian actor, and what it means to love cinema and literature, but then also trying to explore that from, you know, where I am. And I suppose I've also been doing that a little bit more with my Irish side. You know, I didn't know very much about Irish literature growing up, or you know, I knew about Ireland's history because my mother would tell me about what happened in Ireland and the sense of injustice. And I knew about all of that, but I wasn't exposed as much as I'd like to have been to, yeah, cinema or literature or theatre from Ireland, even though it's vast. You know, I'm sure you know that Ireland has such an illustrious history of literature and storytelling and writing. My mum did send me to Irish dancing though every Saturday,
I've
so I did
not.
have that.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I've never heard of Irish
You've
dancing.
never
I've
had Irish
never.
dancing, river dance?
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That for
I
sure.
mean they're
I
amazing.
loved Riverdance growing up watching it. So, um, But I'm curious, like, how did it make you feel? Like, how did it make you feel when you started to discover that you had? Did you feel okay? I'm gonna try and phrase this. I know. Did you feel like you have to explore your Palestinian roots as you started to realize that you were seen by the industry as primarily more Arab or given more Arab roles? Did you feel like that was more of an obligation, or how did that happen? Like, what did that look like? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think when you first start off, and also I didn't go to drama school, so I think maybe if I'd gone to drama school and went down a really conventional route of training for 3 or 4 years, having a showcase, getting an agent, and being launched into the industry just as young talent, maybe my journey would have been different. But instead, I went to university and then sort of came into the industry in a back door sort of thing, or like round the whatever the expression is. Yeah, in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
So at the time, I didn't have, I suppose what opened up a few doors for me was having an ethnic niche, so to speak, because they were widening their search in order to find someone of a certain description. So I think actually initially I thought it was going to be a really positive thing that would make me different. And you sort of hope that your first few credits might be something really, really specific, and then you'll break out of that and then just do lots and lots of very diverse work. And that didn't happen for quite a long time. And I think most Arab actors would probably share a similar experience. And I think it's also just ironic because I don't necessarily look stereotypically Arab, whatever that means. We could talk for hours about all the different ways that Arabs can look in such a broad region. And also, you know, I have an English accent and I was raised here and I'm a Londoner. So it did feel a little strange to be boxed, even though I didn't choose to be boxed. I just sort of jumped on a few opportunities early on. But I think things are changing now slowly, mainly because I got cast in a TV show called The Hardacres, which is a period drama, and it's the first time in my life that I've played a role, genuinely in my whole career, that I've played a role that has nothing to do with being Arab.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it's a period drama, and it's just really joyful and fun. It's pure entertainment, gorgeous costumes from the 1890s. So I think things are finally changing, but it's taken a long time to be seen just as talent, I think. Never mind, it's part of the journey, and I've learned loads and loads on the way, and I think become a better actor over the years. You know, all the waiting around and all the auditions and all the
Right.
yeah. So I think nothing really came easy, and that's fine, but I feel like I've earned it a bit more now. You know, I wasn't one of those people that got snapped up fresh out of drama school, and I've had to kind of build a lot of my own work, and I've learned along the way. So it's just one of those things.
But with Arab Film Club, you know, you really poured so much passion, and I see so much passion and love for Arab cinema and theater as well. Also, just as far as your involvement has been in your career. So does that, like, did you feel you still needed to bring that part of you to this career? Like, that being your Arab identity still matters, you know, in terms of, yeah.
It's a good question. I think what happened was I and many of my colleagues were getting seen for roles as actors, Arab roles, and a lot of the time they were refugees or they were victims of war or perpetrators in or of war. All the roles were related to conflict and violence or oppression and sadness, migration, really big, heavy, depressing themes. And it was very rare to see sort of joy, light, or even just positive representation of Arabs or of the Arab world. And I wanted to explore what the Arab world was saying about themselves. Up until the point of the Arab Film Club and at the point of the Play Reading Club, I was seeing Arab characters written by predominantly European or American writers in American or British productions, and something felt really off and inauthentic. And a handful of times you find or watch something brilliant and they really cracked it. But I would say the vast majority of times it could be quite patronizing or quite marginalizing and didn't feel authentic. And sometimes you question the intention. Why do you want to tell this story again and again and again and again? The same story of misery. And of course, there is a lot of pain, suffering, and injustice in the Arab world. Look what's happened to many different countries in the Arab world, but that isn't the only thing that people from that region should be defined by. It's actually quite dehumanizing. So
can I ask?
I wanted to see.
Yeah, sorry. Just before I lose the question, can I ask, why do you think that is? Why do you think that Arab stories by the West have been told in this way for so long? Do you feel like you understand why?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was to be really sort of cynical about it, I'd say it is maybe to alienate, and it's political. It often has a political agenda. I think so. I mean, there's so much sort of subtle Islamophobia or othering. Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, when some people were trying to reverse that damage done by, constant terrorist roles or constant hijacker roles, the flip side of that was like trying to humanize them by showing them as these sort of really innocent, pure victims, but they were still victims and still kind of patronizing portrayals. And for sure they were harmless, sorry, as in the characters weren't being violent, but it still is kind of an inauthentic portrayal that really robs people from that region of any agency. So yeah, I if I was to be negative and cynical about it, I would say it's political. And then occasionally maybe it's just, once a trend has been set, that's just the only way that people can see people from, let's say, Syria, Palestine, whatever, any Iraq, I mean, you name it. Maybe that's just, I think once you've established that stereotype, it's very hard for people to think that Arabs can be any different. And I think what's really interesting about the Arab Film Club is that the portrayals have been really, really surprising and extremely diverse. The stories, the type of stories being told have been very diverse, and they've broken a lot of stereotypes that people have about Arabs in the Arab world. And, being able to see, like, I don't know, young people celebrate and live in Palestine despite the occupation, the hardship, like the ways in which they can be so resourceful and the ways in which they're highly educated. I think sometimes people don't realize that. I mean, I can't believe I'm
so
saying this. Yeah, people assume that the level of literacy in a place like Palestine or Lebanon or whatever would be extremely, extremely low. And then you go and visit these countries, and the people that you meet are often highly educated, really articulate, and really resourceful. So it's not that occupation doesn't exist, it's just that people are refusing to be defined only by that. And, also stories of love and joy and like stable families amidst chaos. I often find that Arab families or Muslim families on screen, I think things are changing, but at least a lot of the things that I would audition for were like broken families or like really problematic father figures or like kind of oppressive patriarchal kind of family values. And that exists around the whole world, but why is that constant story being attached to Arabness? And so it's also been really interesting to see that there is a section of Arab society that is extremely pluralistic and extremely liberal and extremely inclusive. And go to Lebanon. I mean, there are some areas in Beirut where there's sort of parties and nightlife and art scenes and all sorts of freedom of expression across the board. And yeah.
Right. So, and you mentioned Lebanon because I know you've traveled to the Middle East, and so I'm curious if that traveling and that journey that you did was part of getting to see the truth, like getting to see the truth of a culture that was given to you in a very, like from a Western lens, let's say. Do you think that was part of it?
Yeah, I think, yeah, Beirut in particular, and I'm sure there are other capital cities and other cities all over the Arab world that this would apply to as well. But I mean,
Yeah, I'll vouch for
it
Cairo.
should be, yeah, it should
Yeah.
be top of the world for tourism. You know, when you think about the Roman ruins, or you think about the amazing and very well curated art museums that are there. When you think about the beaches and also the skiing and the extraordinary restaurants and the very vibrant and very diverse music scene, whether it's, you know, nightclubs that stay open until 5 a.m. or whether it's classical music in, you know, sort of quaint concert halls, it's extremely, it's a place of culture. And the same in Palestine, actually. When I went to Palestine the last time I went there, I visited many theaters. I visited like a beautiful cultural center that again was really well curated, had a lot of historical artifacts, and had a lot of evidence of Palestine's strong connection to political activism. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to explore much, much more. There are many countries in the Arab world that I've not visited yet at all. But I'm sure that if I was to go there, I'd find myself being surprised by what you find there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, trying to wrap my head around like you've discovered that you've found more joy in being talent, like as an actor, and to be able to express yourself in any way you want to, not being boxed in. And then you've also discovered the importance of sharing the real stories of your Arab identity through, from what I'm understanding, through Arab Film Club and through possibly writing as well. Is that something that you would say has been another desire to express that truth?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I think for me, the writing is twofold. On the one hand, I think if you can master the craft of writing, and obviously that can take years and years, and, you know, I'm still learning, but I think it can give you a little bit, at least what I'm hoping, and this is how I feel so far, a little bit more agency as opposed to just being an actor. At all levels of being an actor, whether you're starting out, whether you're established, often you are still waiting for the right role or for the phone to ring or for the stars to align. And when that happens, it's very magical and very exciting, but it doesn't always happen all the time. So I think being able to write your own work or write your own role or just kind of stay creative and write as an actor, I think is very useful. And I'm really enjoying that side of it, of trying to learn how to write to potentially, I mean, I'm not always entirely just going to write roles for myself. And in fact, I've been working on a script that wouldn't have any role for myself in it. But there's that side of it. And then I think the other side is also, yes, it coming from a desire of wanting to see better roles for our people and our community. And like the fact that there isn't, let's say, you know, a British Rami yet in the UK, or, you know, that they are still making a lot of shows about hijackings or about terror from the region. Those stories just don't stop getting made. That's what it seems like. I hope there will be a point where the dial, you know, really shifts, but shows about hijackings are still taking place in 2026 and 5. I mean, how is this possible? And so it's quite frustrating where that's all you see you and your community going up for.
Wow.
So I think for sure, and as well, it's kind of dehumanizing, because then people also make assumptions about you and your family based on what they've seen on television. I can't tell you the things that some people have said to me. I won't repeat them here because I just can't be bothered kind of putting more energy towards that kind of stuff. And I'm sure you've been on the receiving end of it as well, loads and loads, where people have made terrible assumptions about Arabs. And that assumption comes from what they've seen in the media and what they've seen in film. So yeah, it's twofold for me, wanting to be able to write as an actor, just as an actor, writer, performer, and then also wanting to write as an Arab in the West and trying to reverse some of the damage that's been done, and also, just have true representation as opposed to just
Wow,
ticking a
yeah.
box.
Wow. So that seems like, if I were to kind of label something or put a name to this, do you think this is a mission? Do you think this is like a mission you've discovered right now at this point of your life? Like you have a very clear purpose, more than mission, like purpose around, your career becoming more solidified. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sort of sound. I think I definitely have lots of goals, and there are definitely things that I want to do, and not all of it is. I don't know when all of it will happen. So it's almost like there are certain sort of North Stars
Right.
that I have of like, okay, I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to do this. And there's no guarantee this will happen in the next 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, but I have to trust that it will happen at some point. So I try to have multiple goals that are sort of feed into each other, so that I'm not getting distracted by something totally left field and something that will take me away from the industry entirely. But equally, it's something else to keep me going while some of my acting goals manifest. And I'm happy, actually. Like, I do feel like I've finally reached a position where I'm working reasonably regularly and I'm creating a lot of my own work. I'm in a position now to say no to things that I really don't want to do in the way that I wouldn't have been when I first started. And I'm still learning, and I feel quite settled, because I think when you're a little bit younger, you really want that instant gratification, don't you? And you think everything's going to happen in a year or two, and you're going to be a superstar within a few years. And then what happens is that does happen for a tiny minority of people, and for the rest of us, a lot of people leave the industry when it doesn't happen. So I think you do need other things to kind of stimulate you and excite you and keep you feeling fulfilled and passionate. And I feel like I found those things, and the Arab Film Club is one of them. It's something that I'm passionate about, and I just enjoy it. It's like a hobby that I love, and I can enjoy doing that while auditioning for things. And then I'm learning more about writing. I've been on a BBC scheme, and I've really, really, really enjoyed learning about that. And it's meant that it's just feeding into my long-term goal of also wanting to write for television. I've done some presenting, and I also really enjoy that. But it means that, like, you don't have one thing that's the be all and the end all, My main goals are all connected to acting, but all the other stuff I love doing. So if it keeps me busy for a few years, fantastic.
Yeah, that's such a great way. That's such a gift that you have, that you're both giving and receiving from what you're doing is like, sounds like a real great exchange of, and in terms of going back to films that you've picked from the Middle East and how that's been received in the UK, I'm very curious to see. Sometimes, like, film itself, like, is a very is an art form, really. Let's say narrative film more than any other, like, nonfiction, but like narrative films. So when it comes to films that are now being written with the Middle East in mind, with the current, like, political landscape as well, do you find that a lot of the films are coming from a place of trauma? Are they coming from a place of the traumas that have been experienced, because it is a reality? And how beneficial is that really for Western audiences? So I guess there's two questions.
Yeah, I think you're seeing a variety of different storytelling, and I think there are still those trauma narratives that seem to get eaten up quite quickly in the West. But you're also seeing lots of other things. I mean, I think most importantly, Arabs should be their own storytellers. And so if someone from an Arab country is telling a story about trauma, usually it's done in a way that it has far more nuance than when it's done by an outsider. So, for example, there's a wonderful film that we're actually screening this weekend by a Syrian filmmaker called Sudad Ka'dan, and it is about the Syrian war, and it is about displacement, and it is about exile. But it's done in such a beautiful, human way. It's very creative. It has lots of magic realism elements. Sometimes it's funny because, you know, humor still happens, like even in the depths of despair, you know, that's life. There's light and shade across life in general. So that for me is a film that touches on some pretty heavy themes, quite dark themes, but it's done in a way that it absolutely is not polarizing or dehumanizing. If anything, it's done in a way that is so respectful and full of nuance, and it doesn't leave you with despair at the end, even though a lot of sadness has touched those people. And I would say, you know, there's an amazing film at the moment called Palestine 36. It's an extraordinary film, and it is about oppression and occupation in Palestine. And there are scenes in it that are extremely upsetting and very difficult to watch, but it's also extremely educational. It's also really well shot. The costumes are amazing. The acting's amazing. It's a masterclass in filmmaking. And also, whilst it is about oppression and trauma, it also is about resistance. It's about spirit. It's a film that gives you pride when you watch it. As a Palestinian watching it, I actually felt quite distraught in some scenes. I felt like, wow, our history really is so tragic and painful. But at the same time, I thought, wow, the film at least portrayed Palestinians to be such a brave nation, you know, a small, brave nation fighting for justice. And that made me feel very proud. So I think when someone has pure intentions and they're making the film for the right reasons, and also from a place of experience,
Right.
and not tokenism, then I think it's fine, and I think it's brilliant, and I think it's okay to touch those dark themes. And if anything, it's educating people in the West, and it's not pandering to the Western gaze necessarily. That for me is really important and powerful. Yeah.
Right. There's so much to unpack from what you've shared, really. I think as far as like receiving authentic stories that are told from the Arab world, there's so much, like, the first thing that comes to mind, because I'm wondering, like, you yourself probably experience seeing things from two lenses, from seeing it from the Arab lens, the perspective of your Arab side, and also the Western side. And so it's like almost seeing, if this was to be screened in the Arab world, it would be a very different experience. It would be like there's so much understanding and immediate connection. But with the West, there's assumptions being made immediately when you see any film from the regions, and especially from the more war-torn countries, you know, in the Arab world. So like getting over that hurdle from what I'm understanding, seems to be the most important thing right now.
Yeah, and I think for me, the best kind of storytelling is when it's universal. So when it can be appreciated and enjoyed by an audience in the Arab world or in the East or in, you know, all continents, and also understood and appreciated in the West and in America and Britain. Like, should we really be telling stories with one market in mind only? You know, and I think it's really, really hard to do, but I do think excellent storytelling is usually when it's the most universal. That doesn't mean it lacks specificity, but it's just that the specificity will be understood by certain audiences, so they'll be able to access a second and third layer, but it's still accessible and enjoyable. Maybe not always enjoyable, because it might be something that's like upsetting, but it can still be appreciated by all markets and all audiences. So I think the way to do that is to make it as human as possible. You know, if you can write about the human condition, which is what we're all experiencing, and then set it in a country that has a lot of stories to tell or has something to say, then a human will be able to understand it, because humans know what it means to be a daughter or a father or a son or a cousin or a wife, you know, or to be, or to experience loss and bereavement or love, heartbreak, happiness. Like, they're human emotions and experiences. So yeah, I think as universal as possible, but drilling into the specificity. And I feel like Palestine 36 is a good example of a film that does that. It's, if you're Palestinian when you watch it, there's a few layers that you will understand more deeply than others. And, or if you're someone that knows the political situation and the history very well, there are references in there that you will maybe acknowledge and appreciate more, but it tells the story in a way that can be understood by, I think, everyone. And
Right.
that for me is the sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah, do you ever feel like there's like you're carrying more than you need to as an artist? Like when you look at Western like artists, like you British actors, you know, you're British, I mean, but like fully English.
No, I understand.
You know, do you feel like it's actually so much easier for so many artists? They just kind of get to do what they want to do, they get to play, and there's nothing to kind of think about. Like,
Yeah, 100%. Short answer, yes, definitely. Like 100%. And I just think, even as a Palestinian, I don't want to sort of victimize myself or center this on my emotions or anything, but like I just feel we carry so much, like, and I was born here. I'm the one that was born here. And I just think all the time you carry so much grief and pain and frustration and confusion, and that's before you even enter the industry. So yeah, I do think that some actors carry less baggage based on their background and their ethnic makeup. And I think, you know, and I suppose it's intersectional, isn't it? Like, you know, perhaps as a woman, there's also extra things that I have to think about as a female performer that maybe other people don't have to think about. And then, yeah, so short answer, definitely yes. And I don't know, sometimes I think it means that you can bring something to the role that other people can't bring, but sometimes it also just means that everything feels political, and that also is quite exhausting. It shouldn't always be political. But it feels like, you know, if you cast an actor of color in a specific role, suddenly it's like a political choice.
yeah.
But it shouldn't be. That, you know, that person just happens to be from that place or that country. And I think that is quite exhausting, but it is what it is. And, you know, I think if you focus on all the obstacles and all the ways in which this is difficult, it will wear you down. So my approach, at least, is trying to focus on the ways it can aid me and help me, the ways in which it might make me a better actor or a better performer, because there are just so many things in this industry, even when you're not Arab, that make it hard to work and make it hard to stay in it and to feel fulfilled and to not let it drain you. So when you have lots of additional obstacles, whatever and they might be different for each person. My approach, and not everyone would agree. Some people would say, you know, we should be doing more to advocate and make the industry a better place. And I also think that too. But my personal approach as a performer is, if I focus on all the ways in which I'm at a disadvantage, it will eat me up, and I won't succeed. So my approach is just not letting that define me, and just to try. You know what? The industry is unfair, but also the world is unfair, and life is unfair. So you can sit around and complain about how unfair the industry is, because it is vastly unfair. But, you know, so is the entire world. And I'm not trying to say that we should accept it. I'm not saying that we should defeat us and accept injustice, but it's unfair. But I'm sticking around, and but yeah, so basically that was a long answer after saying a short answer. Yes.
No, I just wanted to say I admire so much of your objectivity that you have. You know, I mean, as an artist, really, it's so difficult to be to remain objective, to remain cognizant of all the various cogs that are happening, you know, in what you're pursuing, and to notice it and to stay centered is like why I so appreciate, you know, our friendship, and I really wanted to, like, I just believe that your work and how you're just expressing yourself in your art and showing up really will inspire and is inspiring, you know, already so many people who come to the Arab Film Club and watch, and also the industry, most importantly, you know, is recognizing that. And I hope more and more people will recognize, like, the gift that, you know, not just the gift that the I don't know what it takes, you know, to get for you to have arrived at such a mature and clear-headed space to recognize how things work, you know. And I think a lot of young artists will benefit to learn from you. So yeah.
Thank you, Wasim. Well, but you were there at the first ever Arab play reading club back in July 2020 when we read Returning to Haifa. So you've been there since day one, like you're part of it. And I'm grateful to you for, you know, our friendship and all the ways in which, you know, you support me. And really happy to do this and to connect with you again.
yeah, again, in a way, yeah, I think it just goes to show, like, you know, you mentioned, like, suffering in the world that's been happening. You know, you've chosen, when we began this podcast, you know, I do remember this was the day before. Yeah,
it was the 6th of October 2023. I mean, it was just a different time, felt like a different world. And that's not to say that there were obviously many atrocities happening every single day before 7th of October, of course, but it does feel like it does. I think about before and after, and it feels like my life was so different before that day. So I remember last time we recorded this was the night before the 7th of October, and we didn't know what was coming.
But to see what you've done,
here we are.
And yeah, exactly. Well, here we are, and to see what you've done, you know, since then, and the outpouring of support and desire to both pursue your calling and your what you want to do in your life, and offer so much to the community, you know, has been, I think that's where I also want to end it, more in terms of like a leaving question for people of you know, again, I really hate having to phrase things so like carefully in this day and age, but just put it simply, you know, Arabs in diaspora, you know, who are born in the West, who moved recently, who are artists, or anyone, you know, wanting to know how to function and both function is crazy to have to say that, but like, you know, it is a reality. Do you think it's an obligation, you know, for Arabs in diaspora, and I guess I'm going to angle it more so for artists, do you think it's an obligation that the real truth of their backgrounds come to light in the expression of their art? Or do you think ultimately being able to express however you want to, whether it even means fitting in, you know, and like exploring other creative outlets is better? And I know it's an individual's journey, but like, what do you think is being stirred up now in this time we're in that feels so political, like as you mentioned? Mm-hmm. And
I think it's personal, and I think everyone will have their different journey, also based on when they're born, you know. An Arab actor starting out now, like, you know, joining the industry today as, you know, a 20-year-old will have had a very different experience to an actor who is 50 or 40 or 30, you know, because the world is changing all the time. And I guess it swings and roundabouts. But I think the one thing that you can't help is your ethnicity. So, you know, sometimes people say, oh, don't be political, or don't say this, or don't do this. But if you're from a certain background, even if you try not to be political, you're immediately deemed political, whether it's on the way that you look or whether it's on your family history based on what happened to your family. Or so it's a really difficult one. You can't, in my view, you can't sever your identity from your work. And some people might try to, and that's an approach. And some people might try to be relatively neutral, and some people go to the extremes and make all their work to do with their identity, and that's also fine. That might be their calling. So I think it's down to each and every person to find their own way of doing things, and we should all, within reason, like obviously it depends on the circumstances, but we should, I think, also respect everyone's different approach. Obviously there are some projects that are more problematic than others, but in general I think we should really try to support each other, even if their approach is a bit different, because collectively different approaches are what will collectively, I think make a difference. Yeah.
That's so important and so beautiful to like leave that note, is to support each other no matter what the views are or however the expression is, as a community. And I think that's so important. I think that needs really to be received in this world we're in. That seems to be like, on one hand, there seems to be, from what I'm understanding, even when you mentioned nowadays in 2026, there are shows on terrorism and all of that still happen. So there is like a worsening on one hand. There is something.
Yeah, there is.
And there's also the opposite. So it's like two things are happening at once. And yeah, that's what
that sums it up. Yeah.
But it's still a beautiful time to be, alive, and to be able to do what you feel is important, and to show up in the right way is so it's been so great. I've been so refreshed, and it's been such a great time to reconnect and to hear your journey and what you're doing now, and I just can't wait for more exciting things to unfold.
Me too.
Much more. So you've done so much great things.
You too. Well, thank you so much for having me, and keep me updated.
Yes, definitely, I will do. Yeah, we'll see you soon, I'm sure.